This is the Ashaway Powerkill 110SL, and in this review I'll be telling you why it's one of the best rackets I've ever played with and why I hope Ashaway doesn't want it back. The racket came to me used, which is fine, but it means that I didn't weigh it or balance it without any grip on, so what you're getting is what it came to me as. Now, the frame is supposed to be 110 grams, which is without the grommet, without the strings, and without the grip. And when I mean grip, I might even mean the resin. I'm not sure in this case. All manufacturers do that because they want you to tell you what is the lightest that it comes. So that's how it stands with those. Now, once I received this, I weighed it, and it weighed, with the grip, 145.5, so still very, very light. The balance point was 350, so that makes it about an evenly balanced racket. The racket comes with, obviously, an Ashaway string. In this case, it is the Supernic ZX Micro. Now, if you've never played with an Ashaway string before, you will be in for a pleasant surprise because Ashaway strings are really good, and I've played with plenty and I really like this particular string. You'll notice that, you can maybe notice, I'll put it to one side there, that the strings have moved, and I like that because that means that it's not strung too tightly. Now, when you first get a brand new racket, the strings will need some time of hitting for you to just get them a little bit looser and for them to actually even the tension out. So this racket has the right tension for me, so that's maybe another reason that I really like it so much. The racket is made from 40-ton Japanese carbon, which is apparently the highest grade graphite that you can get, and according to Ashaway, and I'll need to read the blurb here, it is designed, the Powerkill technology is designed for precision power using highly refined carbon graphite on all Powerkill frames. Let's look at the frame in a little bit more detail. It is an open-throated racket, which in general is the types of frame that I like. The profile of the frame is almost round. It's not actually round, but it's almost round, and it's not too thick, which is again what I like because that allows me to get my finger around the top, and that's something that I feel is useful. Lots of other rackets are much thicker, and I find that a little bit harder. So if you're the kind of person who really likes to hook over the top, then this is a perfect racket for you, as are all rackets that are not too thick. The frame feels solid without being clunky or heavy, so I mean, I haven't purposefully tried to break it because that would just be silly, but I haven't either been too worried about hitting the wall with it. This has hit the wall quite a few times, quite hard, and I've had no particular problems. The last thing I want to tell you about the frame is the recessed area of the grommets in the head section. Now, this is probably due to expanding the maximum head size as far as the string area is concerned, and I don't have the exact amount for you there, but also maybe the profile, which is called, I couldn't really show you unless I cut it in half. The profile maybe makes a stronger racket, so that's one of the things that you'll notice about this particular frame at the top. Let's look at the visuals. Well, as you can see, it is a black, blue, silver and white design. It is very business-like and it's not too ostentatious, but it clearly identifies the racket. I would imagine that if you see this from the balcony and you've seen one before, you'll say, yeah, I know what that is. And of course, the black strings and the white paint on there go really, really well together. Okay, so let's talk about touch, which I feel is this racket's main characteristics, which is kind of a contradiction considering its name. Never before has a racket given me such a beautiful sweet spot. Now, some rackets have different sizes of sweet spots, but this racket literally seems to be one complete sweet spot. I was able to hit the ball exactly where I wanted to be able to hit it. Hitting up and down the wall was a joy because I almost felt as though I was, 20 years younger and still being able to hit really, really tight shots. Now, I can't say that that will happen to you, but a lot depends on your technique, but I would be very surprised if you don't play with this racket and feel that it is one of the most controllable rackets. One word that came to mind when I was thinking about how to describe this was consistency. I felt that every shot was the same. A lot of rackets, you get a couple of really, really good shots and you could argue that that's to do with your technique or your ability. But I've been playing long enough now to know the difference between when I'm playing and hitting the ball well and when a racket is giving me that. And this racket gave me a huge amount of consistency. Every shot was exactly what I expected it to be. There were no surprises. Now, this racket, as far as I can tell, and let me be honest, this is to do with my experience, not to do with any scientific test. It's very stiff. Now, I wouldn't test it like that, but I'm on camera and I'll probably do it. Yeah, okay, fine. So this racket seems to be quite stiff. Now, let me be clear. The difference between stiff and flexible in terms of squash rackets is probably quite small in a scientific test, but the actual feeling that you get is quite different. I feel that this racket is quite stiff, and that's one of the reasons I get the consistency for it, or at least that's what I'm attributing it to. Forgivability. So we've come to the Achilles heel of this particular racket. So if I had to define a weak spot or weak area of this racket, I would say that sometimes when I've hit the ball, and I know I've just described it as almost having a complete sweet spot, but sometimes when I hit the ball, I do get vibration coming down the racket and into my wrist and into my arm. Now, again, you could argue, well, that's maybe you mishitting it or you not timing, but you know, literally 40 years of playing squash and trying hundreds of rackets, I now know the difference between when I've hit the ball badly and when the racket hasn't responded. Now, it doesn't happen very often, so I do have to stress that. It's not a sort of thing that I happened every 10 shots. It probably happened every 250 shots. I mean, I didn't count it. What I'm trying to say is that it does happen, but it doesn't happen very often. And I doubt that most players will notice it happening more than once per match. And as a weak spot, that's a pretty good balance between what you actually get as far as control and consistency are concerned. Power. Can you hit the ball hard with this racket? Yes, of course you can. Can you kill the ball with this racket? Yes, of course you can. But those two things depend on your technique less than they do on the racket. Do I care whether I can hit the ball hard? I don't care, but that's because I'm 55 years old. My game is not based around smacking the ball as hard as I can. If your game is based around hitting the ball as hard as you can, I actually feel that this racket would be wasted on you. It's almost like you're not going to get the best out of this racket. The player that should be playing with this racket is a player who hits the ball hard because that's the right time to hit it hard, but also wants to be able to control with absolute consistency and accuracy. This is not a hacker's racket. Top strings control. This is when the ball makes contact with the top. Now, if you think that that doesn't happen, you are crazy, because it has to happen, because when the ball is this tight to the wall, you can't hit the ball in the middle here. It has to hit up here. And for me, this is a really important area of how a racket responds. And this racket responds really, really well. It might be because the strings are not too tight, and I think that I don't want to labour that point, but that's really important for me, not having very tight strings. But I can't fault this racket at all for hitting tight shots along the wall. In fact, it was more my fault, my technique, that caused the problems than the racket, but that's because I don't play as much as I would like to. Okay, volleys. I have to admit, I'm still coming to grips with the newer generation of very light rackets. I'm used to playing with heavier rackets, so there's more momentum behind it, so you have to do less work. I'm just getting used to the fact that I have to put a little bit more effort into my arm swing, keeping my wrist firm. Still able to hit great volleys, especially when it's very high, because you've got a lot of control, so I'm very happy with this racket. In fact, I'd probably say that because I'm more confident about controlling the ball, there are more volleys that I would be taking, especially from lower down, whereas I might leave them in the past because I'm not so comfortable. Here, because I'm comfortable with the racket's consistency and control, I'm probably playing more volleys, and that's maybe why I'm feeling less confident, in the sense that I'm playing volleys that I wouldn't normally play. Got a big circle, but hopefully you understand what I'm trying to say. This racket encourages me to volley. Maneuverability. Okay, just mentioned it in the previous section of the volleys, but this racket is really easy to maneuver. It's well balanced, it's evenly balanced, so it gave me no particular problems. And again, I've got a lot of confidence in the racket, so I'm more likely to try and go for those reaction volleys or those kind of things. So this racket is actually encouraging me to play in a more aggressive, forthright way. Instead of waiting, no, go for them, because you can control it. That's what it's telling me. And that's what it might tell you, I don't know. Getting the ball off the back wall. Yes, this racket, evenly balanced, not heavy at all, will allow you to get the ball out of the back corner. But just like the volleys, a lot will depend on your technique. I had no problems because hopefully, I'd like to think, I've got pretty good technique. If you are the type of player who likes to just flick his wrist to get the ball out of the corner, my first suggestion would not be to worry about the racket, but be to go and get some coaching and get yourself good technique. This racket does not limit you in any way, and that includes the back walls and the back corners. You will be able to get the ball out cleanly with this racket. Now, availability. You can get this from PDH Sports and Just Rackets in the UK. I got my test sample from the distributor in the UK, and I'd like to thank James from Goode Sports for supplying me this racket and another racket, which I'll be reviewing soon. If you're in Europe, you can get this from mysquash.com. That is my-squash.com. They do ship worldwide as well, and I think PDH Sports and probably even Just Rackets do as well. And while we're talking about that, very quickly, let me just tell you that you should always go to a specialist. There are plenty of specialists around the UK, probably around the world as well, of course, and I would always recommend going there. Even if you pay a little bit more, which you generally don't, it's worth going and talking to these people because they've got a lot of experience selling high quality rackets and shoes and strings and grips and all sorts of stuff. So go and see somebody. Now, if you want to buy this outside of Europe or the UK, well, as I just mentioned, My Squash does ship worldwide, and probably PDH Sports and Just Rackets do as well. But if you want to get it directly from a retailer in your area, do a little quick search, and if you can't find somebody, let me know and I'll contact the distributor in the UK and they can probably help me find somebody. But remember, Ashaway is an American company, so in the Americas you should have no trouble finding it. I can play with any racket. You can give me any racket and I will play more or less as good as I do with any other racket. I can play with any racket. I want to play with this racket. And that's a difference. This racket excites me. I pick it up and I get on the court and say, right, how accurately can I hit the ball today? How many targets can I hit today? And that is unusual because, you know, rackets normally are just a tool, and this is a tool, but this excites me, and maybe it will excite you. And I know it's a cliched phrase, but I have no hesitation in recommending this racket to you. Go out and see if you can find a demo of it. Lots of these good quality shops, as I mentioned earlier, they do have demos, and this came to me used, so I know that this was a demo before. So you can find people who are willing to let you use it, so go and try it. You won't be disappointed. Now, if you own one of these and you've got some experience that you want to share, you've got some feedback, if you disagree with me even, let me know in the comments and we can talk about it, and that will help other readers. Well, that's it. I can't tell you anything else except that I hope you've enjoyed this review. If there's something that you felt that I didn't really cover that you wanted me to cover, just let me know in the comments and I'll make sure that I do that in the next time. And if you can't find anywhere to try it, go and try harder. I mean, it's that simple. There will be somebody will have this racket for you to try. And if you know me, if you've seen me at a tournament or a coaching clinic, ask me and I'll let you borrow this racket. If you think the content of my videos is useful, please consider subscribing to my channel and turn on notifications. This is a playlist of the technical aspects of squash, which probably interests you if you've watched this video. This is a video that YouTube thinks is a really good fit for you. Thanks for watching, and remember, do something every single day to improve your squash. See ya!